To get started building a collector app, we first go to ArcMap, and I loaded a base map of Lebanon County townships because this is the area that I'm going to be doing the data collection for. After I have that base layer in there, I have to then set up the data collection form that's going to be used for collecting MS4 assets. The place that I do that is in our catalog area. I'm going to right click on the folder where I want to create the form in, and we create the form as a file geodatabase, and then it's going to have a feature class within there. So we go to New, File Geodatabase, and we rename that geodatabase. I'm going to call it MS4 Assets. And once I have that geodatabase named, I right click on it and go to New, Feature Class, and I set up the I start setting up the data collection form. And I'm going to call this Inventory Recorder. And then we have to select what type of features this is going to be, whether it's going to be a point, line, or a polygon, and they're going to be points. And then we select Next. We select the coordinate system that it's going to be in. I'm going to stay with Pennsylvania State Plains South. We just power through this particular screen as well as this one. And the really important screen is this one where we set up the fields that we are going to be collecting data for. By default, it's always going to have an object ID and a shape, so you can't get rid of those. Those are inherent in any feature class, but we can add additional information to this. One of the things that we want to know when we are doing our MS4 inventory is the asset type, essentially what is the stormwater asset. So my field name is going to be asset type. And when we create field names, there can't be any spaces in the field name. And then we select the type of data that's going to be, and that's going to be text. The next one that we are going to be collecting is the status. Essentially, what is the status of the inspection form? Is it in the field or is it out in the office? So we're going to select text for that. And notice when I'm selected on any one of these, you have the field properties down here, where you can set for the criteria. You have the length of how many characters are allowed in that particular field, whether or not you can allow null values, if you want a default value, which is really useful if the value tends to be always the same thing. It sometimes just shortens the time to enter that data. But for this, I'm going to keep everything the same. So I'm going to click Finish, and you're going to notice that it adds the inventory recorder to my table of contents, and over here we see the inventory recorder feature class within our file geodatabase. Now, one of the things that we want to do to further streamline data collection is we want to create a pick list of values for the asset type and the status, so that when we're out in the field, we don't have to stand there and type it in. We just click on it and it gives us a bunch of choices that we can select from, and then we just pick the particular option that's the most appropriate. So what I'm going to do for this inventory recorder feature class is set up two domains, one for the asset type field and one for the status field. To set up the domains, I right click on the geodatabase and I go to Properties and I select the Domains tab. This is where I create those pick lists. So the first one is going to be called asset type, and the description of this is going to be the stormwater asset. The second domain that I'm going to create is going to be status, and I spelled stormwater wrong up there, so I'm going to fix that. Status, I'm going to put status of inspection. And then with each of these, I'm going to set up the actual pick list. So to set it up for the particular field, you've first select it so that you see it like this, and then it has all the domain properties. Since this is a text field, we're going to select text, and it changes it to coded values, and then we just put in all the pick list values that we want. So we want inlet for one, We want covered. Clean out. Outfall. Standard outlet. Overflow. Detention area. And weir structure. Some of these options may or may not be appropriate for your data collection area. If they're not appropriate for your area, just don't use them. Or if there's ones that aren't here that you might need, just make sure that you add them. So I'm going to hit apply there so that I saved those, and then I'm going to click on the status option so that I can again set up the domain for that. And again, the field type is going to be text. So then I set up the codes. So the first one is going to be attached in field. Received by office. Recorded by office. And then hit apply. And OK. Now, when I right-click on this and open up the attribute table, I should see those two fields that I set up and an empty attribute table. And this might take it a second to load that table. And you can see it has the asset type and it has status. So now what we can do, because we set up those domains, we want to make sure that we apply it to the actual fields. So in my feature class properties, I go to my asset type and I select the domain there and hit OK. And I would do the same thing for the other one, but for the sake of time, I'm going to skip that one. We can then symbolize it by the type of asset that we have. So if we just hit add all values, we can show it by the particular category. So now that this is set up, what we need to do is publish this out to ArcGIS Online for Organizations. To do that, we go to File, Share As, Service, and we go through the process of sharing this as a service. So on the first screen, you want to publish a service, so you hit Next. You then have to choose your connection. You should see your ArcGIS Online account in there, so I'm going to select that. And then you can call your service whatever you want to call it. I'm going to keep it as MS4 Inventory, and then click Continue. When we get to this dialog box, we have to fill in a number of options here. The first thing we have to do is go to Capabilities. We want to have feature access, so we click that and turn off tiled mapping. We then click feature access so that we can say what operations we will allow. We will allow people to create data, to delete it, to query it, or to update it. We then go to the item description, and this is already filled in. And but if it's not filled in, note that there are some that are required and it will not allow you to proceed unless you fill those in. And then sharing is who you're going to be sharing this with. Is this going to be just people within your organization, or is this going to be anybody that has an ArcGIS Online account throughout the world? I'm just going to share it with my organization, and then I'm going to select Analyze. When I select Analyze, what happens is it runs it through a parser to make sure that the feature service will work in ArcGIS Online. You will get potentially errors, warnings, and messages. If you get an error, a red X, you cannot proceed to share until you fix the problem. I have 2 warnings, which is saying that and it's the same warning that my layer doesn't have a feature template set, which is fine. I'm not going to do anything about it. It's just advising me to that fact, and then it will give me any messages. So I'm going to just move on, and I'm going to publish the service. And depending on how much yours is, this can take a minute or two. This sometimes can be a little slow to process. What I tend to do with this is just minimize it and walk away for a few seconds while it is creating that feature service. While that's processing, I'm going to open up my ArcGIS Online for Organizations account. And you can see the service has been successfully published, which is good news. I'm going to bring my page over here. And now when I go to my content area, one thing that we're going to see here is that we have the MS4 inventory feature layer, and we also have the service definition file. What you want to do is you want to add this layer to a new map. So we click on that, and we're going to see that our data is added to the map. And I'm going to zoom to this, or zoom to the township, I shall say. And then I'm going to save my map. I'm going to call it MS4 Data Collection. And I'm going to add some tags or keywords. And then I'm going to hit Save Map. And it's now saved to my content area. I'm going to go back to my content area. And I'm going to make sure that this is shared with the appropriate places, because right now it is not a shared map. When I get here, what I want to do is select the share option, which is located right here. And then you can select with whom you want to share it. Do you want to share it just with people in the Nicole Launched organization or your organization, or with everyone? And I'm going to do both for that. So I'm going to hit OK. and it updates the sharing of the web map and the feature service that was part of it. So now the next step would be to go to my phone, go to my collector app that I put on my phone. When you log into your collector app on your phone, you should see the map that was just created. To open the map, you simply just click on it, and it will allow you to start collecting data. So this video showed you the process for setting up the form and getting it to your phone. The next one will show you how to use your phone for data collection.